the club that I used to work at, Club Soda in Vancouver, was sort of a really interesting sort of venue because on the weekends, well, most of the time, what ended up happening with that club is it was a top 40 club. It was owned by Sam Feldman and Bruce Allen.
Right.
So they wanted to add another downtown room to the circuit, and they could book cover bands in. So it started with cover bands, and then I convinced the manager there to let me book Monday nights as an original night, and I called it Metal Mondays.
Right.
And I made a deal with the guy, Steve Harris, band to the bar. Do you remember him?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
He had this drink he used to make all the band members drink. It was called a Billy Badass. And I don't know what was in it. It was just like, it was pure death. And he would light it on fire, and then he would make you drink it through a plastic straw. And if you didn't drink it quick enough, you'd be sucking in melted plastic and fumes. Like it was brutal. So everybody feared this guy. So I made a deal with him that if he gave me one Monday to book, if it wasn't successful, I dropped the idea. Okay. But if it was successful, I wanted to keep it going. So of course, the first one was hugely successful, and the rest, as they say, is history. And what was really cool, I remember what I liked about you guys is I had an immediate sense that, you were different than a lot of the other top 40 bands, because a lot of the other top 40 bands were perfectly content to just play top 40,
right?
Get their weekly paycheck, hang out with strippers, have a bar tab. And
the way you're describing it, it seems like something we should be doing now, frankly.
But I mean, you figure you're set. I mean, you're 19 years old, you're on top of the world. It's great. Yeah. But you guys were actually into original music, which I really related to. And so in that venue, we were booking, Alice in Chains and Soundgarden and Mother Love Bone and all these original bands.
Mookie Blaylock.
Yeah, exactly. And what was really cool is that, the top 40 bands would get into town on Monday and they'd start playing on the Tuesday. So on Monday nights, the cover bands would come down and check out all this original stuff. So they were also being exposed to a lot of these bands at that time. And you could really see a transition. Yeah. You were starting to see, the haircut slowly creeping in. You were starting to see the style of music altering. Now, all of a sudden, sort of what you guys started, because I think you guys were the first top 40 band that I knew that even had songs and had a record. But then all the other bands are starting to play less top 40, focus on original, then getting into the studio. Yeah. And kind of taking advantage of our proximity to Seattle.
Oh, 100%.
Because, the fact that we were close meant, there was opportunity for those bands to get out of Dodge and go play somewhere else and kind of see how it works on a different audience. And by the same token, it opened up opportunities for bands from this area to go down and play Seattle. Did you guys play Seattle much?
Not really. That's what I find so surprising is that when we got out to Vancouver, we kind of suffered what a lot of Canadian groups suffer, is that we built such a following in Canada that it was sort of almost scary to imagine, well, we can go, 4 hours that way and play to a packed room. Why would we want to go south and play to nobody or start from scratch in a way? We did do a lot of like showcasing in New York and showcasing in Los Angeles because of the label situation. Seattle didn't happen as much for us, but I really regret that we didn't do more of that. But I will say our trip into Vancouver and those first, initially it was very quick. Like we'd go to a place like Club Soda. We'd do a week of dates. We had always sort of had that mentality of like, we will do, this week in a top 40 room where we're getting paid. And that money always went back into the band and went back into recording stuff and kind of going forward. I like to look back at it as like, this is the Beatles in Hamburg, having to go out and play, Little Richard and Chuck Berry songs for 12 hours a night or whatever they were doing, hopped up on speed. But, it sort of made us, and I've never regretted it in a way. And I've talked to a lot of people about this because like when I talked to Slash, he never went through that in LA. That was not a thing. You just kind of like, you wrote songs and you did it. But I had been on stage since I was 14, 15 years old, to the point that now to walk on stage is like, basically totally second nature. I don't have that feeling of like, what do we do? What do we say to the audience? It's like the kind of thing of like, we had built all that, gotten all that out of our systems before we'd ever, sold a record, so that by the time we kind of stepped into that game, we kind of had done all this minor league stuff. So I felt okay about that. But by the time we got into Vancouver, it was sort of like you brought up. It was like we had seen so much of this stuff bubbling up, and it was bubbling into Vancouver. So, and that real transition into a new sound and a new thing, because you know how it is in Los Angeles, New York, Vancouver, Toronto. It's like things kind of, whatever's new kind of works its way from the coasts back into the middle of the country. So when you go into the middle of the country, you could still do whatever was cool 5-10 years ago, and it's still working. But you get to the coasts and it's like, whatever's happening right now, that's what's happening. So it really kind of was a kick in the pants when we got to Vancouver and saw, I think we brought our own thing to it too, which probably made it kind of unique, as being able to kind of have a completely different perspective than what was going on in Vancouver. But we saw that influence of the Seattle thing kind of, if you would have told me at the time, Seattle's going to be the next hotspot of music, I think any of us would have been like, Seattle, Washington? Are you sure? Like, it's probably going to be, Los Angeles. I mean, but I guess Detroit or, any of those cities had a scene too. So why shouldn't Seattle?